It's got a strap.
Good morning. After what I can only describe as a public transportation cluster, we have finally made it to Herculaneum. If you visit Naples and you want to go anywhere outside of Naples proper, you're probably going to have to take the Circumvesuviana train. So please be aware when you do that the lines and the stops and which stops on which lines it takes are subject to change. So don't trust the internet. Make sure that you check the tables at the train station, otherwise you're going to end up bypassing your stop and find yourself in Naples. Fortunately, there was a train that did take us back here to the Herculano station. And also, on the plus side, it looks like the rain that's been threatening for the past couple days has managed to hold off for another one. So, without further ado, here are the ruins of the Roman city of Herculaneum. When Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, all of the Neapolitan coast was devastated. Particularly hard hit, though, was the area that was just to the east of the mountain, where there were two communities, Herculaneum and Pompeii. Herculaneum was more of a small seaside resort, whereas Pompeii was a larger, more economically significant center. While Herculaneum may be smaller, it's much better preserved, and that's what we're going to check out first. Over there, in the background, you can see the heights of Vesuvius. On the night after it erupted at 1 in the morning, the residents were waiting here down by the beaches, trying to hide because the sea was closer at the time, and it was thought that Pliny the Elder was going to lead a naval rescue mission to pick up people from the town. But at 1 in the morning, a flow of superheated gas came down from the mountain and basically instantly killed everybody in the town, followed afterward by a flow of mud 25 meters deep that covered the entire city, which is why, to this day, it's so well preserved. Old mosaic is still here.
All in here. Like, this would be like the house, maybe? This is like a house. Yep.
Yeah, this was probably a decent-sized house at some point. And look, there's a whole orchard all full of ripening apples in this courtyard. Inside this building, on the walls, you can still see some of the old paint. It looks like they were just painting other pictures of buildings.
Wow, really?
Wow, this place is in even better shape. Look at these columns. Here it's really obvious that they were building all of these things out of bricks and then just facing it with concrete to look more like the columns back home. It's kind of neat that they had these sort of porticoed sidewalks plus the one-lane cart track. A lot like a lot of modern cities we visited here. I found the hotel room I have right now. This is about the right size. Wow. Look at that. It's amazing how many of these designs are just architectural in nature, just simple patterns. Now this is a well-preserved room, and on the other side of it is this incredible little shrine. Look, you can still see all the mosaic tiles on it. Wonder what was in there. Somebody's Lares, household gods, or maybe that was just where they displayed their trophy. It's amazing how continuous the designs are between ancient Roman use of marble and geometry and modern-day churches. Look at those paintings up on the wall. I think they're frescoes or mosaics. No, they are mosaics. I can see the chipping over there. Look, there's stairs up to that second level. Why are they always trying to stop us from having fun? And here, we've got all these little pits on this marble countertop. This is most likely the Herculanean equivalent of a fast food restaurant. You'd come by here and they'd scoop out your whatever they're serving, and you'd pay and then eat it right here at the counter. It's a lot like the espresso shops here in Italy today. Although, to be fair, if somebody dredges my espresso out of a giant pot, I'm going to be a little upset about it. So what do you have?
Pepperoni, per favore.
Pepperoni, right out of the pot. And we've got a little fire pit, a little chimney. Wonder if maybe they were serving wine or food or something out of here, because it faces onto the street. This might have been somebody's little enoteca. Look at the columns on this place. This must have been magnificent back in the day. I bet this was this guy's private wine window. Like he'd have the slave back there just handing out the wine right through the window. They'd sit here around the little fountain or over there in the courtyard. And it's probably very idyllic. And I bet that his bones are sitting there in that giant pile right on the wharf. Looks like some things are under restoration. This is so well preserved, I kind of feel like I'm walking around a living city. Wow. And here, behind glass, are the original doors for this room. It's amazing. Look at them, they're all carbonized. When that pyroclastic flow came through, it burnt every piece of organic material, but because these are made of wood, they maintained enough structure that they can be preserved to this day. Here's what's left of a bed frame. This was somebody's bedroom. No orchard for this guy. I had just overheard a tour guide say that this was once a sauna.
Oh my God, what is this?
I kind of wonder if these are not little sort of lockers, little slots for people to put their clothes after they changed.
Yeah. Oh, true, yeah. We're in Italy.
Here's the Casa Salone di Nero. I believe that means the Nero Salon, though I don't think the Emperor Nero ever actually was here. Maybe they named it after Nero just because it's huge. Here we are in the rear of the settlement. Look how much taller things are.
Again, a big
I imagine that long ago, when the flow came down, it sort of formed a slope, with this being higher than the other part. So anything sticking above the surface over there got destroyed, but over here, things can easily be 2 stories tall. I think this was the public watering trough. I wonder if there was an aqueduct that came in here. Yeah, okay, this part, if you ignore the ruins on top and the fact that everything is made of bricks, looks shockingly similar to any street we've been on in Italy. Here's another giant, extremely well-preserved house. One feels terribly close to history here. Maybe this was this guy's solarium, because you can see outside, you can see the garden with all the little plants in it. Nice pink flowers in there. And look at that. There's still wood in those door frames. I feel like I'm back at Chaco Canyon. Look at these things. I think this might be a pottery shop or a bakery. This is definitely some kind of oven. Ah, it's a bakery. That is where the bread went. Oh look, another trattoria. I wish I had a time machine so I could go back and try this. Although I feel like maybe if I had that and I could come back here, there would be something better I could do. Here's something with columns at the end of the road. I wonder if this was a temple of some kind. Actually, after looking a little bit more into it, it seems like this was the palestra, which is sort of, in a modern sense, a giant gym. I feel right at home here. Okay, now that looks like an altar, though. There are fragments of the original stairs, once again, all burnt up. Oh, look at the colors at this place. Here's another well water collector.
This is like, goes all the way down.
Yeah. Seems like these...
2 levels.
It seems like these were basically wells for collecting water that came in off the roof and then funneled it down into a cistern where they could pick it up. Look at that color. I bet whoever lived here loved their sunsets. Look at this still life. It's either bread or figs in a little bowl of sauce.
Pomegranates?
Yeah, look at that little basket full of pomegranates. I bet there were pomegranate trees in this yard. Look at that. Looks like a couple lemons and a a pitcher. It's lemonade. Here we've got some statues. And here, this used to face the sea before the giant wall of mud showed up. But the guy that owned this used to sit on this table, or by this table, and eat pomegranates and drink lemonade. Here's the tunnel down to the wharves. If I remember correctly, there used to be a big door here which would cut the town off from the sea at night to prevent pirates and raiders from letting loose on it. And here's a statue of a guy named Balbo, who, I believe, based on that sign, may have been the proconsul of the region at the time. This building, I think, was a shrine to Venus. There's just a little altar inside. Here's the remains of what I'm guessing was another shrine, with 4 little marbles still hanging out there. Now we're down at the ancient sea level, where these wharves once provided shelter, I think, for the products that were brought in from the fishing boats. It is no longer sea level because of this giant wall of rock, which is the remains of the mud flow that once buried the city. When the mountain went off, the people came down these stairs and took refuge in these wharves, hoping for a rescue that would come from the ocean over there. Pliny the Elder, who was in charge of the region, did attempt to mount a rescue mission and brought in several ships, but they couldn't get through because the ocean was still so choked with ash. At some point, late at night, 1 a.m. it's thought, a huge flow of superheated gas came down over that edge and into these wharves where these people were hiding. The next part contains human remains. Fair warning. At 1 a.m., these people were hiding here, lying in the dark together, waiting for a rescue that would never come. And so they died. Here's the actual Balbo statue. I think the one out on the terrace is a replica. Here's somebody's coin hoard. And somebody else's jewelry. There's somebody's dishware. And here were the goods people had on them when they went down to that beach. Herculaneum was haunting. Just seeing all the people down there and then seeing the artifacts they brought with them, it was a lot. But now, after several train-related escapades, we've made it to Pompeii.
Ooh, it's a big boy.
I had no idea that aloe vera grows big, long stems. This has got to be the biggest one I've ever seen. Look at that thing. Pompeii starts with a hill. This gate led down originally to the coast, which, much like at Herculaneum, was much closer to the city. These are the remains of the Basilica of Pompeii, a huge public meeting and gathering place. Where Herculaneum was a small fishing village, Pompeii was a large metropolis. Also, while Herculaneum was struck by that pyroclastic wave that wiped everybody out and gave them very, very little time to collect their goods, Pompeii actually took over a day to get buried in ash, so it's not quite as well preserved since people had a lot more time to try and escape. Here's what's left of the Forum. Every major Roman city had one. In Rome, we got to see several that were constructed by emperors and that were much larger than this, but it served as basically a market, a public meeting place, the center of civic life in Pompeii. Yep, as my dad said, off the forum you come over here and you do some stuff. These are, I'm guessing, just public buildings for various functions. It's amazing how well preserved they are. That Roman brick, that stuff lasts. Here's how it would have looked with a roof on it. You can see Vesuvius in the background over there. Terrifying. Look at this arch underneath this terribly scratched up and faded covering. You can actually see the intricate marble designs underneath. Look at that. Here's the temple to the genius of Augustus. This was actually a temple to the spirit of the first Roman emperor who was deified, and to some extent represented just a tribute to whoever the current reigning emperor was. In this case, at the time, in 79 AD, it was either Vespasian or Titus, one of the two, one of the initial rulers of the Flavian dynasty. So when all this destruction happened, it was actually thought that perhaps the gods were angry that they had so recently deposed Nero and the Julio-Claudians. Here's a structure called the Macellum. I'm not sure what this was used for. Here's one of the famous casts from Pompeii, here in the Macellum. I'm guessing that this and some of the ones near it are people that took shelter here and never made it out. Probably holding a cloth to his or her face, just trying to breathe. Wow, there's a pizza restaurant still operating here? That's crazy. Here we have the courtyard of the Thermae Stabiani, which are the old baths located at this portion of the city. I'm guessing this is where people actually got in the water and sat. Now it is a pit full of mud. Here is a relief version of all the architectural frescoes that we saw back in Herculaneum. It looks like they were colored in too. You can see sort of the red and the yellow, but that did not survive so well here. We've got stepstones if you want to cross the road. That's kind of cool. Here's the former temple of Isis. I bet this was a little courtyardy garden back in the day. Now it's full of giant trees. Here are the remains of a 6th century BC Doric temple. This whole coastline was originally colonized by ancient Greeks, and even before Rome they were building Greek-style temples here. This was one of them. Previously, just through those trees, you could see the sea. And here's the old theater of Pompeii. Not the theater of Pompeii in Rome dedicated to the conqueror, but rather the theater of the city of Pompeii. Walking around the outside of this, you would have no idea this huge structure was here. Here we have a baby theater. No, so little. It's sad it never got to grow to full size. Another trattoria. There's just something so cute about actual agriculture taking place in these little courtyards. Here's what might have been a little pool or a little shrine. Here in this funky corner we have the blocky little horse shrine. And whatever's going on down there. We found some sofa or maybe beds. Maybe this is just where people reclined and drank wine and chatted. Here we've got the orb, the fork, the bird, and the spear. It's pretty neat. And off this road, we have some cellars. I wonder if these are down here for purposes of temperature control, or they just happen to build at this level. Ooh, and here is a nice restaurant. This looks like it's been reconstructed.
This is 7. That's 7.
So maybe this is what this road mostly looked like all the way down. And here we are up above one of them. You can see the giant bakery area right there. There's some mosaic or some fresco on the wall. Move over to this side. There's a nice courtyard which still has a handful of little plants trying to eke it out amidst all the restorations. Wow, it's a shame we can't see into that room. It looks really well preserved. Look at those. A lot of this area is still under active excavation as they reclaim the last 20% of the city from the ash layer. New decor idea unlocked. And here we're at the Casa del Venere. And look at this art. Based on the iconography, I assume that that's Venus. Here's one with some neat square columns, which look so good I almost assume that they are restored. Yeah, over on the other side you can see some bricky looking ones that are probably more original. Apparently this was a dining room, and these were marble beds people would lay on, enjoy dinner while water cascaded down that little staircase looking thing and into this pool in the middle. They'd have a beautiful view of this little garden. Look at this huge grapevine growing in the old garden. That's pretty. Here we have the massive amphitheater of Pompeii. While not nearly as large as the Colosseum in Rome, this is still an impressive structure. Here's what's left of the Palestra, which, if I remember correctly, is basically a huge gym. Carbonized loaves of bread found in a bakery here. All right, we are kind of at the end of our rope in terms of ruins. But just getting back across this city is an eternal task. It is gigantic. Ocean in view. Oh, the joy. And we're out. Here are the wharfside walls of Pompeii, just beginning to turn gold as the sun descends. Fast forward to post-shower. It has been an emotional day. We started with the frustration associated with the insane train schedules here, and ended with a lot of reflection on the tragedy that happened here 2,000 years ago. Herculaneum especially just hit me hard with being able to walk through those people's houses, imagine exactly how they lived, you know, the little joys they took, the way that they would sit around and chat in the evenings, then seeing them all huddled up down there in those wharves, and then see the little valuables that they took with them when they went there for the final time. It was really touching. Pompeii was interesting from a historical perspective. You could see the way that everybody lived. You could see the houses of the rich and the poor. You could see their entertainments. It was more of an urban city landscape, and it, I think, is what Rome would have been had it not spent 2,000 years getting plundered and then rebuilding itself as a, you know, Catholic capital. So yeah, that was really interesting, but it certainly didn't have quite the emotional gravitas that Herculaneum did. So if you ever come to visit this area, it's a fantastic trip. It'll leave you thinking. Make sure that you know what's going on with the trains, because not every train on the same line stops at all the same stops. It's a little bit confusing. Go to the station, check the schedule. That's the only way you're going to know for sure. And other than that, yeah, I really can't say much. We're heading to Capri tomorrow, and that's going to be the entire day, so I should probably get out, get some food, and then think about getting some shut-eye. So until then, good night.